man springer runt och creepar och motståndet vi slipar. Let's get it on. Vi sitter.
Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a Premier League presentation. I'm Blaze, going to be bringing you guys a game between Absolute Legends and Kaipi Gaming. This is Game 3 of this Best of 3 series. We have gone 1-1, first in favor of Kaipi, then towards Absolute Legends. Both of them picking strong lineups with a lot of control. Technically, Kaipi picked up a lot of control potential in their last game, but Magnus only got a blink at the very last second. We saw how it could pay off, but the momentum was just too much, and Absolute Legends just bulldozed them down. So really, really smooth action from Absolute Legends. I'm curious to see if we see another push-oriented lineup coming out from them, or if they're going to draft this quite a bit differently. I really love the Leshrac pick. I think it was exactly what they needed to make their lineup work 100%, and he was able to kind of pseudo-carry the game later on with some good durability and damage. So either way, push, 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 that's what it was all about, and from there, the Alchemist just could not get off the ground. I cannot talk enough about how much I hated that acid spray pickup, but you know, it's just the decision that they made, and it didn't pay off, quite literally, with the gold aspect of Grievel's Greed. So in this scenario here, again, this is going to be the last game of the series. This best of 3 match is part of a double header. Following this game will be a game between Fnatic and Absolute Legends, and it's going to be a match, actually, of best of 3 series. So, starting things off, what we normally do for concluding a match is try to go for a post-match interview, but with this situation, depending on how much time it takes, the draft, the game, we don't want to be pushing Fnatic back even further. So, in this scenario, what we're going to just try to do is, if we have plenty of time to spare, go for the interview. Otherwise, jump right on into the next match. So, either way, we'll see, but generally what we try to do is do an Ask the Pros post-match interview where you guys get to ask questions to the guys. But for the first time in this series, we do see a pickup of IO. IO was banned out both times, I believe, by Kaipi. They this time around take off the Batrider, and from there, they pick up the CK for themselves, they pick up the Magnus for themselves, leaving IO with less options as far as a symbiotic companion with which to gank. But either way, IO still has versatility and potential with a lot of different carries. Could go with the Tiny, could go with maybe like a Sven, a Lifestealer, Faces Void. I've even seen it with a Weaver, for crying out loud. Just the biggest thing is to get behind the opponent. If you can go and get a Blink Strike, if you can try to jump on in and
10 seconds remaining.
Anyways, sorry about stopping the song, guys. Whatever. I'm gonna close out Twitch chat. It distracts me way too much during casting. But anyways, so the pickups here, the options that IO has to synergize with. You got the Rikimaru is what no Tidehunter likes to run. You've got the Lifestealer and Faces Void, which are more common in kind of late game scenarios here. And then if you still want to go for gank-oriented pressure, Tiny and Sven both have a lot of disables to throw on in there. So great picks, but could possibly see a lot of those banned on out from Kaipi in this next banning stage because they have yet opted to pick up one. I do like IO Darkseer. What you can do there is turn them into their own ganking squad by putting Ion Shell on one hero, waiting for the cooldown to come up with the duration still active on that one hero. Pretty much you're getting 2 Ion Shells and maxed out spirits all ready to go, and then you just drop on top of them and get tons of AoE burst damage on that one little spot with a nice little movement speed boost to work with. So it generally adds up very, very quickly, and it's very high kill potential. But the problem is you're getting kills on those supports, on those that offlaner. Darkseer loves farm, but you generally want to prioritize it on a hero that can actually make the most of it in a late game DPS sense. The difficulty with that is now you're up against a lot of setup stun potential. You see the reverse polarity, you see the Chaos Bolt, now you see that Leshrac and his Split Earth. So a standard dual lane composition is the CK and Leshrac together. You can also add on a third to just make it that much more deadly, but they'll possibly just be stacking and pulling most of the time. So CK, Leshrac could be found in a dual lane setup on the mid lane, otherwise a dual or tri or 2.5, something like that down on bottom. Either way, CK is going to find some farm because it's a very devastating kill lane. CK will be able to get tons of kills off on most heroes. Darkseer might stand a chance, but even then he's going to be cutting it close. Either way, once again, picking up the Rubik. They love to pick up this Rubik against the Magnus, and I gotta say, every single game, Rubik's been on point, getting very, very powerful steals and having a lot of potential. So I think it's a really great hero, and in this scenario, they've been using it to great effect, even without the spell steal. His other two main skills are nothing to ignore, and in this scenario, I think the Rubik's just been performing very, very nicely, just showing the power of that hero with the continuous pickup of him repeatedly. Alrighty then, so beyond that, we do see the bans coming on out. The lifesteal to start off for Kaipi. We'll probably just see 2 more carries that they're worried about synergizing with the IO. In response though, Absolute Legends banning out something completely different. Banning out the Clockwork, which I feel might have been unnecessary. It is a great offlaner, but you know, they've already got the CK and Magnus, they're half 9. So I don't really see the hookshot being that essential for setting things up. I might be missing something there, but in general, other than the fact that the cogs into Split Earth is very, very powerful, I think the CK and the Magnus kind of epitomize that strength a little bit more, so, and they could just follow up with something like a Windrunner or even a Bounty Hunter, something to get more gold on the table would be nice. Either way though, right now, we see that the Clockwork has been banned out, as well as a Bane and a Keeper of the Light. So this sets it up. The Shadow Demon is still available, and that could be something Kaipi wants to pick up for their second pick if they still have that option, which I think they will, because Io and Rubik generally are only seen in the supportive role. They both can mid, but they generally don't. And so in that scenario, you can't pick up a Shadow Demon for AL. Kaipi can just snap that up if they want to go for a CK Leshrac Shadow Demon tri-lane. Oh my gosh, there's nothing that can live against that. If they pick up the Shadow Demon, Darkseer will be forced to just sit in the jungle and kind of go for 3.510, because there's no hope in the lane like that. Just abandon hope, all ye who go to the off lane, because seriously, it's just probably one of the highest kill potential lanes in a single target sense in the game here. So. Manning out Puck, the little fairy dragon that could, in this case, will not be able to, because he is going to be taken off the board here, along with that Sven, and along with that Lifestealer. Presumably that means they want to go for the Tiny. I think it works really, really well with the fact that Darkseer can vacuum them up all together, and even possibly get an RP on top of that. If we see a vacuum from Darkseer, an RP steal, and then Tiny cleaving away with his Aghanim Scepter, oh my gosh, it's going to be like .gif EG material there, because it's just going to be just this tiny ball of death. We kind of saw a little bit of that effect in the very end of the last game, but in this case here, it will be over very, very quickly. It's not going to be something they drag out. It's going to be 2 quick swings, 2 relatively quick swings of Tiny's Aghanim Scepter, and suddenly they are just completely demolished. So that'll be fun to watch if they can get that off, but in the meantime, they're just kind of looking for a good laning situation. One cool thing about the Tiny IO combo is that you can toss, if they're not too far away, you can get IO to tether you, get close to you, and you can toss them in on the enemy, getting that early stun off, and suddenly you can go for a quick early pick. What that means is that they're going to have to get a very durable offlaner, so heroes like Windrunner and Bounty Hunter, like I mentioned, may just not cut it. It's hard to say. Either way, though, this Visage pickup is something I did not exactly expect. It's not a Shadow Demon, but when we're talking about tri-lane kill potential, I definitely think that this is something they could be looking at, and more likely, because of this selection, I think Kaipi wants to take that power, and instead of saying, okay, we'll just put it all bottom and let the Darkseer jungle, we're going to go up top. We're going to go for try versus try situation with Visage, Leshrac, and CK, and I definitely think it can be used to great effect. Early on, IO and Tiny, and even Rubik, have terrible base armor, so all the physical damage in the world, from the composite from the Diabolic Edict, or just a hard right-click damage from a Grave-Chilled Visage, or a CK with a high attack roll, suddenly people are just going to get shredded. Any disables pretty much mean a kill. Maybe not an IO who can tether away, but otherwise, that kind of damage will come out very hard, very fast, and can shut down the Tiny. So I think they almost kind of baited them into picking the Tiny because he doesn't have that much mana to work with. His avalanches have to be very, very precisely done. And also, like I said, all 3 have low base armor, which is kind of odd for a rock, but yeah, combat caster, strength-based caster. That's generally their lot in life. Earthshaker, Sanking, that kind of thing. Either way, that is what we're going to see here. I presume Leshrac, Visage, CK top going up against Wisp, or IO, Rubik, and Tiny up top. Then we'll have Darkseer 1v1ing versus somebody, and then Magnus on the mid lane going up against somebody. So those 2 are the picks that remain to be seen. A mid solo for Absolute Legends and a offlane solo for Kaipi. I think in that kind of situation you might be looking for a Lone Druid. Lone Druid is still in the pool and is very, very powerful for what Kaipi wants to do. It kind of sets him up for a dual core lineup and dishes out a lot of damage, as well as being great in a 1v1 scenario. The one thing that I don't like about it is it provides no AoE. So it looks like it's going to be a Tidehunter on the mid, which is great for team fight, great for trying to burn down the CK illusions, because you can anchor smash them all, reducing their damage, and disable them on up. So those kind of things actually make a really big deal if you're trying to avoid a lot of damage. And then it sets it up more opportunities for stealing Magnus's ulti and that kind of thing. But Magnus versus Tide on mid, it, I think, generally goes the way of Tidehunter, but if the Magnus goes for the solo safe lane and Eternal Envy goes... Okay, now Eternal Envy is going Storm Spirit. Yeah, unless they're changing up their roles, I've been wrong about this entire draft. So we'll have to see how it plays out. I'm not going to gab on about the 8 different ways they could run this. We're just going to have to wait and see. But Eternal Envy on the Storm Spirit, this should be very, very interesting indeed. So Zizu and Pylite are obviously going to be supporting it up with the Leshrac and the Visage, but Bone 7 pick up of the CK almost looks like they want to solo with it, which is odd, because the Storm seems like a better solo choice, but Eternal Envy is currently running him. Anyways, we're waiting on the last pickup here. We do see Miracle has drafted up that Tidehunter. Gonna have Sox / Jolene up on the Tiny, Miggle on the Rubik, Mania on the Darkseer, and we just have to have Rise picking up that IO. So that'll be really interesting how they play this one out.
5 seconds.
Yeah, we'll have to see. A lot of different ways this can be ran, but in this scenario here, I definitely think a defensive tri lane from Absolute Legends is in order. So that'll be pretty interesting. Supportive Wisp, or IO. Supportive IO gonna come on out and head up on that top lane there. Mania gonna go for the jungle very, very early on. But as I was saying, things are gonna get a little bit weird as far as how this has been drafted up. We're actually gonna be seeing a safe lane solo Eternal Envy, going for, you know, as much GG as possible with these GG branches. Gonna get lots of last hits, and early on, he's gonna have an uncontested lane. Darkseer is actually gonna start off with in the jungle, I believe, and so Mania is in a position here where he's actually way too terrified of going down bottom. And the long trek that he's gonna have down bottom is actually gonna limit him at least 135 gold based on a TP scroll, but also could waste a lot of time for him if he just tries to make a run for it. Either way, Mania setting up shop here is not really going to be a favorable situation. I mean, you could try to go 4 versus 3, but the Darkseer doesn't contribute that much early on in a ganking sense. So it looks like Mania is actually heading on out, and that'll be good for him. Jolene going to be blocking up the mid lane here, actually being pulled, no, just committing to one more HP regen oriented item. So that'll be interesting in this matchup here. It's going to be Kaipi picking up that triple branch tango build, whereas the salve comes out for Jolene just to make sure that he can right-click away. He can't really spam out spells to kill creeps. He can't just drop a shockwave or throw out some Beastmaster Axes, that kind of thing. So he does have to save up a little bit, and that's what he's going to do here with his salve. He's just going to go for the right-clicks here and there. Branches, branches everywhere, but not a tree to see. So Eternal Envy is going to be going down bottom, 1 versus 1 versus Mania. He's already gotten the gist of what's going on there. Starting off with an Ion Shell, he's going to go 1 versus 1 here. It's an interesting matchup. I don't think anyone will dramatically be victorious over the other one, but it comes down to how they play, how they position. Good maxing of Static Remnant could really push it in the other direction, because he's going to be constantly Ion Shelling these, and that's something to be concerned about. Either way, most of the action is going to be up top here. Got to be very cautious about that. A couple of Observer Wards drop down. Very, very passive one for the Radiant, but they get the vision that they want. So, interesting positioning here. Rise and Zizu kind of duking it out in the jungle, but again, Io only has 0 armor. I guess only isn't the right word there, but either way, going up against Visage, who himself has 0 armor, it's a close exchange. But any time that Rise is in a bad spot, if he doesn't have somebody to tether to, he's actually just going to get fried. We do see the creep skip action that is down on bottom lane. Mania going to be able to farm up nicely with this stout shield and plenty of HP to work with here. Whereas Storm Spirit going to be going for that overload static remnant build. We do actually see mid lane, or wait, holy crap, it's actually on top. Wow, I feel terrible for missing that. But anyways, it was the Tidehunter getting picked off here. They went on in, they committed a Soul Assumption, bursted him down hard with a Chaos Bolt. And yeah, I was thinking something was going to be happening very, very shortly up there, but I was just a little bit too far behind, so, you know. So we do see early on Miracle picking up the Anchor Smash. It's an interesting pickup in this scenario because it does negate some damage coming out of that CK, and it does physical damage in of itself, but it doesn't, I mean, the Gush adds in a lot more generally. The slow, the armor reduction, it allows you to actually put some damage out. So it's an odd pickup in my mindset, but, you know, he'll get both of them eventually, so it's not that big of a deal. going in for some stacking action, but this Sentry Ward from the Radiant, gonna make sure that that's not gonna be a very good option for them. Anyways, Invis picked up for Jolene, setting him up so he will be able to get guaranteed experience up here in the mid. Transitioning on, Sentry Wards come out, but they will actually, with 2 supports auto-attacking it, it's going to be the kill on the Dire Sentry before the Radiant one comes out. So, good timing from Kaipi, just responding very, very nicely here. Another Sentry does finish it off finally, but I think they have one more up their sleeve. Yeah, they have one more Sentry up their sleeve. They can drop it right here at the right time and then kill this one, which is exactly what they do, trying to kind of race it out. But in the end, it's going to be this Sentry sitting here until a couple more are purchased, which is very, very favorable for Kaipi, making sure that the lane is in much more their control than the enemies. Mania using up his clarity. He's now going in for yet another Iron Shield, rank 2. The Courier bringing on in some Soul Ring action. He's going to be able to pretty much sustain it indefinitely, whereas Storm Spirit is running out a little bit as far as his HP sustenance. He's going to pop off that Tango and now tank up a few shots from the creeps here. Rise with the Spirits doing a little bit of harassment, but I'm trying to make sure that I'm not missing any action, but it seems like they're all just kind of biding their time for the moment, jumping on around all over the place. Boots up for Arise. He also Bottle Crowed just to make sure he can sustain very, very nicely here. But that 4-minute rune isn't coming, and that Courier needs to get out here very, very quickly. And here it comes. Jolene kind of doing the same thing here, but a little bit further behind. Does some auto-attack harassment to Arise with that Avalanche coming out, but it's actually Bone 7 looking for a kill on Miracle. There is no Kraken Shell, so his stun will really mean a permanent solution, locking him in position, but nevertheless, not finding the opportunity just yet, and Rise still feels confident with that mobility of the tether. Coming on in this exchange here, Jolene, right now Rise is just pushing out the lane so that he can go for the next rune, but Rise has actually covered it up. The thing is that Tiny cannot bottle it because he's already bottle crowed, so it was very, very important that IO did accomplish that right there. Meanwhile, they're just farming up creeps, but Rise is trying to put pressure out wherever he can. Telekinesis up onto Pylide, kind of I'm not saying mistake, but they're not getting anything out of this. There comes the Chaos Bolt, 3-second stun onto Tidehunter, but he's scared to right-click underneath the tower. He's not there yet. The damage comes out from the Visage, and here comes the Diabolic Edict, but here's Rise back in the action. Double damage expiring. No, still has it. Quick Burst brings down Visage, and now going to be looking for more here with the CK. Telekinesis him on up. Miggle survives, and from there, they will be able to clean it up 2-0. Really favorable for them, and makes up for them losing the first blood early on. That double damage rune, something to be underestimated, but 100 damage coming out of that IO. It's going to be these little tiny blue pinpricks actually add up pretty quickly. Bone 7 wants to go on in, but he doesn't really have the backup of his team just yet. Leshrac, only having 1 spell available, only can contribute so much. Double clarity for Miggle. His mana is going to go up insanely quickly, as you can see here, because there is 2.5 times the normal clarity healing coming on through here. Down on bottom, Mania just keeps it going. Soul Ring, Ring of Regen. He's going to have so much gold. He's getting 100% last hit farm right here. You see 38, but surprisingly, Eternal Envy not doing too bad. Despite only 1 point in Remnant, he is actually hitting at 32 CS and holding the line despite this awkward position here. Here comes Mania, though, trying to close in, do a little bit of harassment pressure. But Mania not going to commit just yet. Actually, a mid lane is actually where the damage comes in. And Arise, 1 hit from death. He will, however, survive. And instead, the Wisp dies to the tower. 9 HP left for Arise. They go on in. They try to go, I believe, for a toss with the Wisp tethered to him. Something along those lines. Whatever it was, it did not work. Instead, the Magnus survives. He popped off that reverse polarity, but well worth it to get a kill on the Wisp and walk away himself. Really nice, and gives a little bit more time for Bone 7 to farm on up to play the carry role that he intends to. So very effective counter gank, and yeah, just got to keep on top of it, because the one thing about these teams is they have such long range of initiation. The Kraken Chill will be, not able to counteract any stuns that already popped off the threshold, so that burst coming on out of the Visage for the Soul Assumption was enough to finish it off here and give you another point on the board. So that is a 2-kill swing in about 45 seconds. Now looking for some damage on the tower with this rank 1 Edict. But yeah, sorry guys, I'll do my best, but one thing about these teams is they have such long range initiation. They have the toss, tether from the IO. He's going to go for relocate ganks pretty soon. CK has a big pull in with the reality, which is only going to get wider range. And from there is a lot of long-range presence from everywhere on the map. We do see down bottom that they were able to go in and get that Avalanche off on Storm Spirit, but Eternal Envy, having enough mana, will be able to ball lightning to safety here. So, fortunate for him indeed, but he will be forced off the lane for the moment. But yeah, Ball Lightning, big initiation potential. I'm going to turn my sound up a little bit. Maybe I'll hear that a little bit better. But it is very difficult to stay on top of these kind of guys because really they can come out of anywhere. We do see a TP coming in from, I thought it was, yeah, it is the real Tiny, with the Illusion Rune active. And they're going to try to go on right here with that Gush. They're actually showing that they're ready to go. But here comes the Avalanche. Zizug finding himself in the wrong part of town and gets bursted down hardcore. Io finding another kill, and Rise is in a great position to move in towards some bigger and better items. Can look for Arcane Boots, look for Mechanism, rather than just dilly-dallying with Magic Wand and Boots and low quality items such as that. He can actually play as a number 4 role instead of a number 5, and that's a much more powerful West, most definitely. As far as experience goes, it is going to be the Magnus topping out just over the Darkseer, and then following shortly after that behind is Eternal Envy. So he's getting plenty as far as experience goes. He has his Ball Lightning, plenty of escape, but he doesn't have much as far as gold. We're seeing that much more so go the way of Mania, with that hood almost being finished up here. He's actually coring out Headdress, so never mind. He's going to go for that mech. He just wanted double regen, but instead he's actually going to get Ball Lightning down. There is going to be a Shockwave coming on in. Will they commit the RP? They have to if they want to kill him because he has that Surge, but it has expired, and from there they just right-click him on down, slowing him with the Overcharge and the Shockwave to finish it. Really good timing from them with the Surge having already been popped off. So it works very well out. The Skewer used to great effect in that engagement, and they didn't have to waste the RP. Regen rune up on Magnus, so he is raring to go for the next fight. Pressure coming in on towards the top tier 1 tower. We'll see if they can really put some permanent damage in because Visage is ready and waiting. Has a couple of charges of Soul Assumption. The Magnus is here as well, just spamming out the Shockwave with the regen rune. But it's actually Bone 7 coming on in to get some pressure out onto Jolene. Instead gets avalanched up, trying to toss him back. He should have tossed into Mania. Instead, might not get it, but with this vacuum, the kill is secured nevertheless. Has that Surge available, so he can stay right on top of him with a very powerful Ring 4 Ion Shell. Again, if he had tossed him back underneath the tower, it would have been a sure kill, but still securing it very nicely because Pylades' Split Earth was just a little bit too late. So, look at this gold graph. It's actually pretty interesting here. Kind of back and forth. Both teams finding their kills, finding their windows of opportunity. But right now, not really seeing too much variance. They're kind of sitting around 500 gold advantage or disadvantage, and not that much more so for experience. It's definitely going in favor of Absolute Legends, or sorry, in favor of Kaipi for the moment. But that's not always going to be the case. It's going to be switching back and forth very quickly. And what it comes down to is really the teamfight engagements. I mean, little ganks, little skirmishes, little pickoffs, that's always well and good, but other than the IO relocate ganks, it's going to be all about how these teamfights are broken down. Because Tidehunter is about to hit level 6. He's been farming up nicely up on top, and yeah, he has picked up his Ravage now. So there is the RP, there is the Ravage, there's also the Rubik making his way towards Spellsteal, and that can be really big. So we'll have to see how it plays on out, but IO is still only level 5 and looks for more opportunities here. If he gets an assist, and there might be a bigger opportunity, but right now they're just going to skewer away, and it looks like Zizo and Arise are home free. Pylade really sticking it up in mid lane here. This is pretty interesting how they've kind of transitioned in to claim their lane here. Actually, the catapult missing uphill. If the Siege Creep hadn't missed, he wouldn't have gotten that last hit, but I think that's probably a really tiny thing compared to the pickoff on the Magnus. We do see here Miracle not just committing the Gush, just doing a little bit of damage here and there, but it's really going to be the burst combo with that Tiny that can bring down people unexpectedly swiftly. So that's where the Magnus gets dropped down before he can, not so fortunate to do the defensive RP underneath the tower this time around, and so he does take a fall. And that is actually his first death of the game, so this is definitely something to keep an eye on, but he's still moving well on his way towards that Blink Dagger. Orchid going to be coming up on the Storm Spirit very shortly, and we'll have to see how that pans out. But I really think that unless he gets it off at the very beginning of the fight, it's not going to have the biggest impact here. Tidehunter has that Kraken Chill, so the Ravage will eventually come out. It's just the question of if they can delay it or not with those kind of mechanics, or if they just have to fight on through it. So really they're looking for Orchid off on the Darkseer, on the Rubik, something like that. The Wisp is actually also pretty powerful to put off the Orchid Malevolence on, because it amplifies the damage he receives. It'll burn him down that much more swiftly, and if he's not tethered to a target and overcharging him up or relocating somebody in or out, then he actually has a lot less potential in those kinds of early skirmishes and big team fights as well. We do see that there was a disconnect on towards the left track. He'll be coming back on in, and then we'll see how it kind of pans out from here. But starting things off, it looks like it's definitely moving much more so in favor of Absolute Legends. They want to take this tower, but we do see Real Cake on mid. Leshar comes back on in, but the tower's already fallen. The Ravage pops off. Highlighty going to be the first to fall most likely, but actually they have to turn around and pop off an Avalanche. 4-second stun on Rise, but they've already cleaned up the CK with Miggle already available here. He has his spell steal, and yeah, using the Relocate very, very nicely, going right back up top to put pressure out up on this tower here, while Jolene just farms away. Down on bottom, big damage coming on Mania, but Eternal Envy out of mana. It looks like there's just going to be a TP scroll coming on out, and the Shockwave will not lock him down. So very, very favorable for Mania to be able to get out of quite a mess down on that bottom lane. So Arcane Boots plus Wisp is very, very powerful no matter who is the one bearing it, because Miracle, every time he has these Arcane Boots up, can just tether to the Wisp and gain, again, 2.5 times the amount of mana you normally would gain from Arcane Boots. So it actually adds up very quickly where he can, expend those rank 2 gushes without actually paying long-term consequences. Something that you usually don't see talked about, but it actually adds up pretty quickly where you can just spam your abilities. He's kind of, with a couple of Arcane Boots, as effective at sustaining mana as a Keeper of the Light would be, just because he adds in that much more effectiveness to the Arcanes, even if he doesn't have them himself, which at this stage is unlikely for him to pick up. Going for the Urn instead, good pickup there. Looks like Jolene is going to go for that Aghanim Scepter outright. It's actually a pretty great item to pick up early on because it increases your farm rate substantially, cleaving on through creeps and making sure that you can pick up those other big items like the Yasha and Demanta, or maybe like an Assault Karas or something along those lines. So things are settling down. Hopefully I'll make sure that I'm on top of the next engagement. But in the meantime, we do see actually Relocate down on bottom. This is really, really bad for Rise. He does get a nice skewer off, but pulling in all three, they're just going to go for the Tiny Toss combo and finishing off really, really quickly. Avatos comes out. It is on cooldown, which means that Bone 7, if he wants to, can go and initiate. 1 second stun, however, is not going to be enough to lock down Mania, and he does get pulled back. However, there was not enough communication because Jolene thought they would turn it around. Instead, he tethers back up. They go for maybe a kill up on top, but it looks like Zizu is too far out of the action, and Mania, oh my gosh, Rise actually just completely bailing on Jolene there. That was very, very unfortunate because although Mania was perfectly fine, I don't think that 1 second stun would have concerned him too much. And in that situation, Rise took out one more party member than he really needed to. In that situation, pulling out the Tiny might have been the better choice. Either way, they do lose one, but they were able to pick off the kill on the Magnus as well, delaying that blink as much as possible, but it's too little too late. Rise has it. And here he comes, trying to pop it off on these three here. Could be a very, very big kill because these familiars have follow-up stuns. They have a lot of damage with one single TP scroll. Right now, putting pressure down on bottom, though, Jolene gets a Avalanche. Now they go for the toss, but unfortunately, just going to hit on a creep. Either way, Pielighty will be right-click down here. No problem at all. We do see up on top, the push really not changing its positioning here, but biding their time. Rise is ready to go in. There's the Reality Rift. There's the 4 second stun. RP canceled because they just don't need it. Skewer to bring down Rise, and he is completely eviscerated here. Mania on the run. He's seen way too many battles for how few deaths he's acquired. He's actually only won 1-1, but he seems to be in the thick of things prior to that point. Interesting. Orchid coming out for the Storm long term, but he hasn't really been finding farm since the laning phase. It's kind of broken down. He lost his tower, and since then, 61 CS, not really much to write home about. We do see initiation on the mid. Miggle tries to go on him, but the Ravage is popped off here, so they're going to be able to burst him pretty hardcore. Nice Split Earth keeps EE alive, though. Goes for another ball lightning and will survive. Jolene's so close, but no cooldowns left. Just gets the Urn off, and that will be enough. Rise coming on in to make sure they can accomplish things and canceling out that TP as well. So in this position here, if the Split Earth wasn't as perfect as it was, then they wouldn't have even killed Miggle, but at least they get one for their trouble. It's still only picking off the support and dropping down, feeding away the Tiny. He is only like 1,700 away from that Aghanim Scepter, which is something he can farm up very, very swiftly now that he is on the prowl with that Invis. Tiny sitting at 4, 1 and 5, looking to make it 5, and finds Bone 7 out here, but actually doesn't get the combo perfectly. Gets 2 seconds stun instead, but the vacuum might be enough. No, wall of replica, a little bit too late. Bone 7 walks away, and he's just too quick on his feet. Right now, 380 MS, and the drum will make that even more. So, this position here, they're goofing around a little bit with the wall of replica, but in general, they unfortunately missed that opportunity. It seemed like the first couple ticks of Avalanche didn't land true, and that might have cost them. Also, he could have possibly just waited. He was invisible, so Ion Shell on an invisible target can be a very frustrating thing to go up against. Either way, what Tiny really needs to pick up now, other than his Aghanims, is a lot of attack speed. The Overcharge is not ranked up yet, so although he's picking up tower kills, his attacks are very, very slow from that rank 2 grow. It is a really, really big deal here. Miracle doesn't have Ravage, and he's getting pulled on in. Kraken Shell's out of that Electric Vortex, but still taking a lot of damage. The Reverse Blade comes out onto both of them here, and it looks like Miggle will be taking a fall, along with his ally. Could try to go for the steal in that Magnus, but the Shockwave already being the last cast, Miggle won't find his opportunity. Surprised he doesn't even steal the Shockwave, but whatever. Either way, walks away just barely safely. But good thing for him was Eternal Envy didn't have any mana to work with. That Orchid provides a lot of regen, but the static amount, it's rather limited. And of course, he doesn't even have the Orchid just yet. Aghanims, 800 gold away. Jolene needs that Ags ASAP if he's going to be able to actually carry this game the way he intends. Because pretty much in a Wisp Tiny lineup, it's all about how much farm the Tiny gets. At a certain point, he's unstoppable, and how much damage he can deal to the towers, so on and so forth. He can just go for crazy backdoors, and even like as long as they don't have fortification, a single relocate can mean they're racks. But in this situation here, he's kind of falling behind. 17 minutes isn't the worst, but it's definitely not what he wants. He wants to be able to go on and use that Aghanims to burn down many, many more creep waves and get that much more at his disposal. Darkseer picking up a hood, looking for that pipe, but it will be a little bit of time before they can actually get that going. Blink Dagger up on Miracle, looking for some big ravages, but it's going to be a little while before he gets that rank 2 ulti. So both of them just kind of waiting a little bit longer before they want to get engaged in these team fights here. The Magnus also trying to delay it just 20 seconds, which should be rather shortly. The push coming on in from this tower will be cut short if they try to actually go aggressive in this scenario. They're trying to bait people outside the tower realm. They want them to go out into the river so they can go for the RPs. But actually we'd see his Blink Skewer coming on out. The Ravage comes on in from Miracle, though, getting on just about everyone. Jolene taking some big hits, though. 2 second stun coming out. Miracle gonna get dropped down here, just completely destroyed. Miggle, next target of choice, but he's actually walking away. Nice vacuum, nice wall of replica coming on down, tossing the Wisp back in. Rises in the middle of the action, looking for Bone 7 or Eternal Envy. Double damage for the Storm Spirit, but it's Bone 7 that tries to turn things around. 3 second stun coming out, and Chaos Bolt stolen. But it's going to be a little bit of time before anything can happen, because Storm Spirit is not willing to commit. So in this situation here, the Tier 1 will likely fall, but Fortification says they could still come in for this. They still have Magnus ulti. They just have to find the right timing. I gotta say, it was good initiation from Arise because he only exhausted the Skewer, and now he has the potential for this team fight without having to worry about Ravage or Wall. That in of itself means they have a great opportunity here, but they have to time it carefully. Starting off, they get it with the Familiar to set it up. There's the RP. There's that Skewer going on through. A vacuum comes out from the opposition, but it's not enough. They get their kills. They are, however, going to be losing also that Darkseer. Oh my gosh, the pickoffs. Relocate will come back on in. That means that nobody got out. That means that nobody got out at all. There goes Io, right back on into it. Tries to skewer to Miracle, but instead gets locked down for 4 seconds, and that's 4 seconds too many as Rise now gets completely wrecked. That was beautiful for Kaipi. Perfect, perfect timing, and it was as little as it seems. As little as it seems. It was one of those familiars, which now, may it rest in peace, was the setup for that team. Going for 1 quick stun onto 2, set up an RP onto 3, and from there, that is their team fight to take, 100%. The Tidehunter wasn't up. They killed everybody but the Wisp, and the Wisp, who had tried to relocate one of his allies out, instead falls with them. That sets up Storm Spirit, picks up his Orchid, and he will be able to initiate even further, delaying Ravages or just locking down people to burst them down before they can contribute. Really, really great swing for Kaipi Gaming, and if we look back at this, let's say 20 minutes from now, when we move in towards the conclusion of the game, if Kaipi takes it, I would say this is definitely their turning point. This is the time that they started gaining real traction, and it's going to take a lot for Absolute Legends to make this work, and it takes a lot from the Tiny alone, as Jolene is still 100 away from that X. So we do see coming out from the Visage just a few more warriors trying to gain some map control, but right now it really feels like Absolute Legend is at the very least doing that right, putting down this ward in mid, as well as still having one covering Roche, covering that bottom rune area. I really think that that's two major wards over junctures that are going to be impactful for team fights very shortly. In the interim, Jolene coming up on top, and he's going to be farming things up here, but the Aghanims is en route. They need to start stacking camps up for him, and he needs to just start farming away. When he starts getting big items to follow that up, he's going to be in a great spot, but in this position here, he's so vulnerable to these smoke ganks. Jolene falling back now, but, you know, they're already making their way that direction. They are already kind of closing on in, but they're kind of using it as bait right now. Bone 7 is in a pretty tough spot right now. The illusion kind of scaring him off for the moment. If he recognizes it as such, he will... Yeah, he's just going to duke it out with it. But in this position here, Mania, Miggle, Miracle, they lurk in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity. If Bone 7 steps anywhere near this position, he is going to get destroyed. Let's check out the Dire Vision and see that he is still just barely out of comprehension. But the second they see him is the second that he gets just completely destroyed. We do see right now Tiny getting the last hit on the tower, using that tree, using the Ags, delivering so much damage with that cleave potential. Again, Vacuum is all they need to set this damage up. The one thing they have to worry about, though... Never mind. I was going to talk about Wall of Replica Illusions on Tiny, but that's the wrong composition, the wrong team setup there. Either way, pressure coming out on tier 1 bottom. They're going to teleport to the tier 2. Kind of delayed a little bit. They have fortification. They could use this as an opportunity to defend, but yeah, just staggered TPs, getting into the position they want to be, and then they always have the relocate, so that's really good for them. I actually love how they TP'd in. 2 to the back, then 1 to the front, and then the relocate still available for the Tiny. So in that position, they're actually going for a skewer up. He does actually put himself on the cliff. Jolene is in an okay position now, gets Electric Vortex back on in. He's actually taking a lot of damage here. Goes for a toss, but he will take a fall. Rise, another relocate that just fails. Gonna pull himself back in 12 seconds. Red Miracle going for a Ravage on top of the Magnus alone. He buys back, wants to get that RP out, but for right now, everybody all over these cliffs. There's that Wall of Replica, but it doesn't really connect. Mania gets a good vacuum off, but now gets stunned out. Is locked down, goes to the north, but he's just gonna get pulled back on into it, and here's a Rise to help clean up. Now, they can even go for Roshan here. They still have that RP. It feels like a Rise never really gets it off in the first engagement, but in the second one, he always has it to follow through. For right now, though, they're going to take tier 1. They're going to look for tier 2, perhaps.
Dire structures are fortified.
Shockwave stolen, but only a little bit of counter push provided from that. But it really came down to the fact that Tiny got picked so hardcore, and Rise didn't even really get to contribute much. He tried to relocate him out, but that's a substantial delay. And now we see them just kind of getting picked off. There's no reason they need to contest that, but I guess they're just trying to hold it out a little bit longer for Tiny to jump back on in. We see that Absolute Legends definitely had an advantage, but yeah, Kaipi getting that swing right back on up, roller coaster riding it back up to an equal level as far as gold, and an even better one as far as experience. It's really nice for them. BKB coming out pretty soon for CK. The reason I think this is a great selection, despite not generally preferring BKB on CK, is the fact that they are going up against a ton of magic-based disable, specifically Tidehunter's ulti. Ravage is one of the few ultimates that its disabling component is not nullified. Is nullified by BKB. So being immune to that, avoiding the Ravage, the Avalanche, even the Darkseer's abilities, it really makes it so that he can fight long time, despite the fact that his phantasms will be suffering those different things. Either way, grouping on up, Magnus looking for an opportunity to get that RP off, but for right now, Miggle just stealing it up and distracting him on out. For a couple familiars, scattering things on in, but a telekinesis to pull him away. Actually going in on a Rise, can they burst him hard enough? The toss comes on down, but he is able to walk away, hasting, but he gets gushed in the end. Now tethering on in, they pull out. Oh my gosh, he hates Tiny to be in the front line. His first instinct every fight, Rise is like, okay, Jolene's on half HP, let's get out of here. But the cool thing is they'll be back in to take Roche in a moment, because now all 5 are here. So they are able to go on into this, and they don't have to worry about Magnus. Buyback on cooldown. Magnus is going to be down for 32 seconds, and that's enough time for them to take this Roche uncontested. So berating Rise a little bit for that mentality, but in this sense, it works out very fine. Other than tethering Miggle, which makes no sense to me, other than keeping his mana up through Arcane Boots, which I've already iterated on. Aegis definitely going to go to Jolene. It looks like he's also going to be picking up a BKB of his own, which is pretty interesting, but it's very, very effective. Chaos Bolt, just too long of duration. The Graves Chill, very frustrating to play against as well. Even that of like what the Leshrac and Storm Spirit puts out, all of it is magic-based, and that's something that they definitely want to negate. Now we do see all of them coming down into the enemy jungle here, but as far as vision goes, Radiant have this ward up for at least a little bit longer, and that's going to give them full understanding of where the enemy is, where the threats remain. But they take that as an opportunity to just, farm up the enemy's jungle. Say, screw it, you're taking our jungle, we'll take yours. And Eternal Envy is going to be happy to take a couple of big items to the bank. Once their BKBs start coming out, their teamfight is back in action. Like, their last teamfight was kind of atrocious, but in this scenario, if they were all magic immune, it's a completely different story. So it is going to be BKB up on CK any moment he decides to buy it. And Eternal Envy, it's only going to be about, let's say 900 gold away. However, I'm not sure if they have enough time for him to really focus on that farm, because we do see here the tower just getting completely wrecked. Again, big bonus damage from this Aghanim Scepter, and the overcharge, even if it's only rank 1, is providing some attack speed on top of it. So they take the tower, they walk away, but they have this Aegis, so it's effectively a 6v5, and they're willing to really go in on it. In theory, you can actually go in for like a 7v5 in the scenario where you buy back somebody, and then you relocate them back on in. It's a 12-second delay, but it's something that can still be rather effective in the right case. But I don't know, it's just not really going to be that common either way. So, right now, the biggest issue for Tiny is look at that attack speed. He takes up 1.3 seconds per attack. The overcharge nullifying it down to 1.0. It's reducing that deficit a little bit, but his attack speed is just losing at rank 2 substantially, so at rank 3 it's going to be even worse. The BKB will not help that, but it will keep him survivable enough in a team fight and active enough that he can just go for the right clicks and get some damage out, and then from there he's going to look to amplify it. He's going to look for a Hyperstone or Mantis Style, something along those lines, to give him some extra AS there. Another pickup of the Blink Dagger by Miggles Rubik. He is really wanting to get in the right position to get the right spells off, and it's going to be key if he wants to get a good reverse polarity to go on through. It's pretty much the one item that you need to make sure that that's actually going to be a viable option. Pipe up on Darkseer. They're ready to teamfight. I honestly think they should kind of force the issue here. The couple reasons for that is the Aegis the Immortal won't be up for that much longer. You got about 3 minutes left on it. And on top of that, the BKBs are coming on Storm Spirit here. He only needs 100 more gold, and he will have that available. CK already having his completed. So in this position here, the teamfight is going to get that much harder when these BKBs start popping off. And it really depends about the initiation from there. So they're kind of be grouping up for the moment, going up on that top lane. They're going to be putting some pressure out there in a moment, but they're actually waiting for this relocate to come back out. I'm not exactly sure where they came from, so we'll see in a moment. It's actually going to be Rise pulling them out of that position. So they saw an impending gank coming. Storm Spirit exhausted a lot of mana to get into that position. He used his Orchid, he used his Vortex, and he put them in a bad spot. But immediately after that happened, Rise was able to use his relocate to kind of pull them out of that position, keep the Tiny alive, as he's been doing all game long. But unfortunately, at least one of them has returned. Sometimes you bring back both for quite a bit of a brawl, but in this scenario, it's just the one, and just Rise, and unfortunately, there's really no hope for him. So, another kill on the board for Kaipi. It's kind of a slow game in the sense it's only 18 to 16 in 29 minutes, but it's still very active. It's still high. It's very directed. Every single team has their intentions. They want to go a certain way. And right now, I feel that both teams have kind of reached that point where they know what they want. They actually feel they have what they want. They have a gem up. They have a couple BKBs. And they're ready to go for the next big thing. It looks like CK's next big thing is either an Armlet or a Dominator. Both of those being rather effective in their own right. And but other than that, the fact is, they have a bunch of initiation potential. They have the immunity to team fight actively, and all they're waiting for is for Absolute Legends to step a toe out of line. They just want them to go a little bit further than they need to and go in against it. Again, they're up against 2 Tinies, so it's easier said than done, but they go on in with the BKB. Reality Ref pulling on in. They're actually going to focus down on Rise with this Orchid, try to burst him down. They go for the RP onto 2. Jolene and Mania locked in position. Miggle only steals a Shockwave, dies anyways. Mania going to drop as well. Too much burst damage here. Finally, the Ravage comes out, but it took so darn long. They get big cleave damage, though, with that Anchor Smash. Pielighty going to drop to 1 more Anchor. Now we see Chaos Knight on the front end of it, trying to finish off on a Miracle, but here's Jolene back in the action. Couple swings, trying to bring down the Storm Spirit here. Oh my gosh, Eternal Envy almost dying. Gets the toss. No, he hits the wrong target and he gets stunned up. Jolene will be the final casualty of this extended battle here, but Eternal Envy, within an inch of his life, still remains. Nice turnaround to an extent, but if that Tidehunter Ravage had just been that much sooner, that would have been a completely different fight. But the issue is those BKBs, those darn BKBs. Make it so that you can disable a couple people. You can disable the Phantasms and the supports. But as far as those 2 main frontline damage dealers, Bone 7 and Eternal Envy, they get to do whatever they want in that time period. Going in, putting pressure on the mid tower now. If they can get a permanent advantage out of this, they're going to be in a great position here. So the tier 2 will fall. Fortification not going to be wasted on a position like this. It's going to fall one way or another. But the biggest thing to think about that team fight is that they got that. They committed 1 more Magnus buyback. He's had to actually buy back, I think, 3 times now. It adds up pretty quickly. But most importantly, they got 2 tiny kills. He had the Aegis Immortal. He still would have had that up until about 5 seconds ago. So they were able to fight on through that. And if they can fight through a tiny with an Aegis, what can they do to one without? So in this position here, I think it was a really good way to engage the fight. The RP hit on 2 right when Tiny popped his BKB off, so still disabled during that time period. And from there, it wasn't a coordinated enough team fight from Absolute Legends. They were engaged on a little bit before they were ready, so the pipe and mech weren't as much of a factor. Same with the wall, and especially that Ravage coming so late in the fight. Going on, smoking on up. They don't have... Oh, they do have the RP. Holy crap, I keep on forgetting how short that cooldown can be sometimes. Anyways, jumping on in. They have Eternal Envy with that BKB up, doing a lot of damage here. Rise blinks on in, gets a double RP again. Rise the first to fall, looking for Jolene. No relocate to get him out this time. He has to just cleave away. The Anchor Smash does help him out a little bit. They do finish off the Magnus in return, but they lost their damage. They lost the Tiny. Kraken Shell's out of stun, but it's just too much. All 4 of them here just obliterating everything in their sight. And from there, they take another 3 for 1 swing in this case. Oh my gosh, just really good. Smooth action from Kaipi. Kaipi Gaming, really on top of this. And now, again, this is one of their games to lose. They have control, they have initiation, especially with this Magnus being very underestimated by Absolute Legends, and finding double to triple RPs every single time he goes for it. So, very nice for them. And now the map control goes more and more in favor of Kaipi Gaming. You see that the ward just expired up top, but they're going to be refreshing those very quickly and putting more pressure across the team board. Along with that, Storm Spirit picking up a Staff of Wizardry actually sets himself up to get some big items. It was a little bit risky because he bought all in, no buyback, and as we all know, buyback is amazing on Storm Spirit. But in this situation here, Eternal Envy feels confident just picking up a little bit more intellect, can go on in, farm away, and get a big item. Sheepsticks and Ashivas, they're both really powerful, but in this case, I don't know. I mean, the BKB is up on Tiny, so you're not going to be able to scythe him the time you want, but if you scythe a Tidehunter and Orchid him after that, and you don't focus him at all, so no Kraken Chills, it actually means that you can make sure the Ravage doesn't happen, and from there, you just really limit their teamfight potential. So, I guess Scythe would probably be my item of choice, but Shiva's still has a lot of presence, especially because it also reduces attack speed, which has already been Tiny's thorn in his side. Again, rank 3 grow. Look at this AS. They're actually initiating, so we'll focus on that real quick. Bone 7 popping off a beautiful BKB timing, coming on in. They get everybody in here, going for an RP. They bring down Rise first. Jolene will be right-click, just too hardcore from Chaos Knight. They, however, do get a stolen RP coming out of the Rubik. The Ravage doesn't hit on too much, but the Cleave does. And turning things around, they actually do get a couple kills here. Eternal Envy out of mana, gets gushed up after the BKB expires, and they're going to be able to finish off on a Rise shortly after the fact. No, the blink comes through, and he'll be able to get on out of there. But now they change their targets, and they change their focus. Zizu with a big burst coming out from his Soul Assumption. Pylite still taking a lot of damage, but it's going to be the death of Tidehunter Prior. Beautiful skewer, keeping Pylite up, and he will stay up here. Miracle, drop down. Oh, Mania still wants to rise, though. The Soul Assumption not doing enough. The vacuum pulling him back on in. They do get one more kill out of this, but they've already lost so much. They have lost 5 for 3 in that engagement there. It just wasn't how they wanted to play it out yet again. They're forcing more and more BKB cooldowns, and that's all well and good. But in this position here, the only thing they had going for them was that stolen RP. Coming out of Miggle at the very last second, it did help out their fight quite a bit, but the Ravage was practically useless. The BKBs were still active, and it didn't change anything. So that RP set up Tiny to do some damage, but he was still too low. And that's where he's getting this extra tank. That's where the plate mail comes in, to mitigate more physical damage, to be able to survive that much longer, especially with a Wisp rank 4 overcharge. But in that scenario, Eternal Envy jumps into the back line of things and immediately focuses down the Wisp. There's only so much you can do when you've got a Storm Spirit rotting your ass this entire time. So that really was good targeting systems from Eternal Envy. But of course he did get picked off when he was on the run. Either way, we do see his BKB down to 7 seconds. Along with that, there is that 8-second BKB up on the CK. Halberd up on Tidehunter. Interesting selection here. Definitely gives him a lot more potential to disarm on towards the CK, but and actually the Storm Spirit to an extent, but it doesn't really feel like a single individual doing right-click damage is really making that much of a difference. Like, Heaven's Halberd would be amazing versus Absolute Legends because most of their damage is in that Tiny. The rest comes out from the Darkseer along with the Tidehunter. So in this situation here, the Tiny is doing a lot of their damage, but with Kaipi, you've got it from Storm Spirit, which is part magic, part physical. You've got the CK, which is going to be having Phantasms up, 3 of them. You're going to be able to dish out a lot of damage spread across the board, and I don't think the Halberd is really going to change that too much. Trying to use it here up against the Roche, he's still actually, despite the disarm, right-clicking away. The Familiars doing their stun, doing their stone form, scouting things out so that they can try to go for a favorable engagement here, because Kaipi really doesn't want to give up this Roche freely, and Pylite even has a BKB himself. That is ridiculous. Going in RP on 2, that is going to be a really, really big turnaround here with the Phantasms coming out, big damage coming across. But Jolene is still up. The Ravage does go on through. The Vacuum pulling him in. EE almost down. He does die to Cleave. And from there, Jolene will have to be on the run, but at least they killed one. They pop off Eternal Envy. He is defending on the top, keeping that up here. But we do see that CK was able to pick off Darkseer with a long-range reality. So, good pick there. Gets the stun off, gets the kill, forcing out a buyback from the Darkseer, but I'm not sure it's enough. The Roche should still be in the hands of Kaipi. They have a big right-click damage potential, and I think they're going to use it here. Roche is still full life, so they're a little bit more hesitant, but with this Empower, I think they could do it. They got the buyback of the Darkseer, but that's just a vacuum. They could actually be doing this entire time. Like, Absolute Legends hasn't left the base yet, and now they're finally doing it. And they just need a couple of good crits to go their way to make sure that this is going to work out for them. A couple of bashes here and there, but the urn will keep him sustained. Yeah, so that is going to be it. Sweeping on through, it is going to be Jolene looking for some action. Throws out the Avalanche. Here comes this Silence onto Miracle. He doesn't have Ravage, but they are all grouped up together. Anchor Smash doing a lot. The Cleave doing even more. Vacuuming them together. Bone 7 dropping quickly, but he will be able to survive. Armlet Toggle, BKB. He's not going to drop just yet. Maybe that can change, but with this BKB, Armlet Toggle and TP Scroll combined together is the ultimate escape, and there's no chance for him to drop. However, Eternal Envy gets stunned up a couple times over, and he will be their kill to claim. And with that, that is going to be the Roshan finally in the hands of Absolute Legends. They've been fighting for this for quite some time, and now they finally have it available. Again, the push pressure continuously goes up on the top lane here, but Leshrac is more than sufficient to be able to clean it up here and send it the other direction. Aegis on Tiny, no question about that. But I gotta say, one thing that's impressed me is Pylite's farm. He is actually sitting himself at 103 CS, a KDA of 6'5 and 21. Assists just racking up like crazy, and that adds up to a net worth of actually 10k. You're seeing that he's moving in towards the sites of his own. He has a BKB treads. This is not a hard support Leshrac that you're used to seeing. This is one that has so much more potential than that. Overcharge comes out for Rise. He's going to be going on this tower pretty hardcore, trying to burn down the backdoor protection, but in the end, the fortification will negate that, and it's going to heal right back on up. Eternal Envy down, though. They don't have as much teamfight as they'd like, and they need the biggest RP, as big as they've been getting at the very least, and make sure that it's not stolen if they're going to make this happen. But it's very difficult to prevent that steal. Miggle is in a great position here, has Ball Lightning even, to jump himself in whatever position he prefers. Jolene taking some big hits, but he does have that Aegis, so they can't commit fully to this because he'll be right back up in the action. Either way, they fall back for now, knowing EE is up, and it looks like Envy is going to be enough to dissuade them from focusing further. BKBs come out, between them, Phantasms drop on down, looking for a Ravage, but cancels out. Everybody's immune. You can't do it, Miracle. Instead, it's going to be this duel. 4 seconds down on Jolene. He might fall. The vacuum, the wall replicat's almost enough. The vacuum is, oh my gosh, the Ravage as well. Jolene still active. He gets Lightning, but he's still going. The Aegis finally pops off, but the RP only hits on Miracle. Splitter at the follow. Miggle gets locked down here. He has Ball Lightning, but he doesn't get a chance to use it. Jolene, once again, all alone on the battlefield with Mania at his back here, trying to close the distance. He gets to toss one more right click. No, the skewer! Beautiful skewer from Mirage. They're cleaning this up. They're keeping everybody alive, but the vacuum back on in negates that sentiment entirely. That is going to be the death of Eternal Envy, but a 2-second stun and a Reality Rift also means turning it around on Tiny. They defend their towers, they defend their racks, they take again an Aegis of the Immortal down, as well as killing the holder entirely. Mania tries to run through the wall, but even with this Ghost Scepter, he cannot survive. He will be claimed. And again, that's just too many kills going the way of Kaipi. They take him down with them multiple times over. But the end of that fight just kind of showed that Kaipi still have full control of this. Buybacks coming out. We saw one come out from this Chaos Knight. He needed that very, very early on. But beyond that, it was all their fight to take. That was just too much for them to handle. But I gotta say, Absolute Legends showed some balls in the scenario that they were in there. Jolene duking out with CK, waiting for those BKBs to expire. As soon as the BKB came out, we saw the Avalanche, we saw the Ravage. Everything made it so that they could keep it up, keep it active, and that damage came on out. Not actually sure why this isn't regenerating from backdoor protection, but either way, it's going to be enough to force the Familiars to walk away. Didn't really highlight on this just yet, but there is an Aghanim Scepter on Zizu that is setting it up so that he can dish out a lot of damage with those Familiars, as well as set up 3 of those very, very powerful stuns. And if your micro and skill is amazing, then you can actually go 3 stone forms, resummon 3 more, and then do 3 more stone forms. And that can be, obviously, probably some of the hardcorest disable in the game here, but it's not always that reliable. Either way, one thing to mention is just from that Aghanim's HP, he's sitting at 1870. That would by itself not mean too much, but with a maxed out Gravekeeper's Cloak, he's actually sitting at 31 armor. He negates 65% of physical damage, and that's something that is very, very powerful. Not against the cleave of Tiny, but definitely up against his upfront damage. AC finished up for the Tiny. Let's check out items in general. Are there any scythes up yet? EE was working on his for a while, but Envy still doesn't have it. He's still working away. Looks like we are going a little bit past our time as far as Fnatic versus Absolute Legends, but obviously they are preoccupied with this game here, and we'll have to see how it ends before we can move on to the next one. So we're definitely not doing the post-match interview for whoever wins this game here, but we will be able to go to the Fnatic game in just a few minutes after this one concludes. So I might need a quick breather. Kind of ran out of water here, but beyond that, it's still a very, very exciting game, and I can't really blame it for being this intense, this action-packed. We see, as far as KDA, that Eternal Envy has 11, 5, and 17, but answering back is the Tiny, and Sox is actually putting up 11, 7, and 13 himself, so he's definitely very literally carrying his team. But we do see some interesting item choices picked up. We already saw the Halberd completely untied, but now IO looking for one as well. I guess if they feel that they can just back-to-back disarm the CK or the Storm Spirit, negate their presence, they only have to worry about incidental AoE damage from Leshrac. But there's more to him than meets the eye. He now has a Scythe of Ice, still now has the Hex, and Storm should be picking up his very shortly as well, if he wants to buy out anyways, which he's pretty far away from buyback anyways, so it's difficult. Puts advantage in the tower. One more right click is actually going to go for a Ball Lightning, stunning up on towards the Tiny. Gets a double RP between Mania and Jolene. Recorrects himself to get both of them. The Ravage doing almost nothing at all. Mania getting sheeped up, and that's going to be his death 100%. So getting the tower, getting a couple kills. Now cleaning up on Rise, who relocated in a little bit too far. That is 3 kills. That is a tier 2 tower, and that could be the game. We will see if they can take the high ground here. They're more than willing. Roche will be up in about 4 minutes. but for the moment, it's just really their focus has got to be on the base. So that is their intention here. Looking at the gold graph, we see a little mini elephant forming as we move on up towards an 8K gold graph, and something very similar for the experience, 20K. Very, very substantial experience advantage. I mean, just look at these levels. 23, 21, and then there's going up against support side of 14 and 15. Adds up very, very quickly. Either way, they've taken the top racks, no problem at all. Now looking for the mid, they take the tier 3. Arise cleans up here and goes in for the next kill. They go with the Edict to bring down mid racks, and there's nothing to answer back with it. Ravage is on cooldown. The steals are non-existent for Miggle, and although he almost has his own Heaven's Halberd, they're in such a desperate position. I don't feel there's much that they can work with here. No, they do jump in on Storm Spirit. Eternal Envy dropping quickly, but that Ball Lightning just barely, by the skin of his neck, able to pull him on out of that, and he does survive to get on out of there, presumably to purchase up a Scythe of Ice shortly. Yeah, he does have pretty much all the components he needs now. Sorry about that. But in this situation, this is, oh my gosh, yeah, that trunk got really, really substantial really, really quickly. They took down the top, the mid racks, and that just breaks it wide open. I was talking the experience gain is immense, 25,000, but now with this 14,000, Absolute Legends is in a desperation mode. I mentioned that Tiny, at a certain point, becomes impossible to stop as far as backdooring and just destroying buildings, but in a base race scenario, you go 5-man Absolute Legends versus 5-man Kaipi just on buildings alone. The fact that there are so many racks down for Absolute Legends means that Jolene can't play that way just yet. They have to win a fight, and right now, they don't really have much firm ground to stand on in that regard. They have to have the enemy make a mistake. They have to have Kaipi come on into the Roche pit and get just ravaged without BKBs active. Something like that could change the pace of the game, but right now, it's just too much for them to handle. Heart up on CK, making his illusions that much more durable with 40 strength to propagate across. Along with that, they still have their gem. They still have now a second Scythe up with Eternal Envy's abilities. We do actually hear Telekinesis coming on in. That is Miggle completely out of position. 1300 crit. There's the relocate. There's the Ravage. Wall of Replica. They do end up getting the RP without Rubik available, so they completely clean house with this. The RP is pretty much the last word here. I mean, Jolene is attacking like crazy. Sock's doing a ton of damage, but finally his BKB expires, and there's the Hexes to finish it off. Jolene needs a toss to finish off Bone 7, but instead an Armlet toggle keeps him up, and Eternal Envy is going to be the one to help clean house up against Tiny. No buyback available for the Tiny, and with that 75 seconds in the grave, that's enough time for them to finish off the tier 3 racks. Rise, the last man standing, last shiny blue ball of love, trying to counter push it out, but he's going to need the help of the Darkseer here, and that's pretty much their last resort. Last ditch effort here. Without a Wall of Replica, it's going to be very, very difficult to keep this active here. Yeah, that reverse polarity was extremely good from Arise. Exactly what you'd expect from him out of a game like this, and in this situation here, it looks like they're going to be able to seal the deal. I mean, it's essentially Absolute Legends has to go in either 3 or 4 versus 5, and instead Mania goes in 1 by 1. So he's going to fall here, hexed up, stunned up, no chance at all. And although Eternal Envy is in a pretty rough spot, he's setting it up so they can kill off Miggle. So that's everybody. That's it. That's going to be a good game because absolutely, there's nothing else that Absolute Legends can do. They tried everything they had, but again, the advantage just got to be too much. And I was talking about a turning point in the game, and that those extremely powerful fights in the mid lane, where they got great RPs off, even as early as the tier 1 tower fight, really, really set things in motion so that they could keep on rocking and rolling. And yeah, the Tiny, not so much. Sits on, it looks like a crit was his next course of action, but all he had was that Aghanim's Assault and BKB, and it didn't add up to enough in the end. So very, very well played for Kaipi Gaming. They take Game 3 in this Best of 3 series, and they're going to proceed on through with another point on the rankings there. A little bit of more pride to back them up here as they try to get in bigger and better tournaments with their roster that's really coming into its own. They were really, really effective, and although there was a stand-in required for Absolute Legends, hopefully we will be seeing their 5th individual coming on into the next one. Unicorn had some internet issues. The Danish ISP dropped a huge amount of individuals, so in that sense, hopefully it's been rectified. Hopefully we can see Unicorn playing as their roster for 5, but for the moment, Jolene and Sox doing what he can. It's just unfortunately not enough as Kaipi Gaming takes Game 3 of this Best of 3 series to finish off this match best of 3. So 2-1 in favor of Kaipi Gaming. But now our next thing is going to be going on into Absolute Legends' next match. Again, it's a double header. So what we're looking at now is another best of 3 series. We're going to give Absolute Legends a maybe 5 to 10 minute breather. And from there, we're going to go on into Fnatic versus Absolute Legends, a best of 3 series that has so much potential for some really interesting play. But anyways, we'll have to see what's going on with that one in just a few minutes. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Again, this is Blaze. You can find me at twitter.com/blazecasting. Also on Twitch and YouTube, but I'm not very active in those regards. But either way, solo casting this one up for today. But it's been a really, really fun series so far. And now we're going to go on into Fnatic versus Absolute Legends, another best of 3 series, back to back as soon as we get on into it. So thank you guys so much, and you guys have a good one.